Hello, welcome to 10 Minutes with James. I'm Buddy Pennington, pastor of Westville Assembly of God in Northern Holmes County. With this lesson, we are going to be dealing in James chapter 5, verses 19 and 20. These are the last two verses of the book of James. Allow me to read these to you. I'll be reading from the New Living Translation this time. My dear brothers and sisters, if someone among you wanders away from the truth and is brought back, you can be sure that whoever brings the sinner back from wandering will save that person from death and bring about the forgiveness of many sins. As we come to these last two verses in the book of James, let's pause for just a moment to remind ourselves of to whom James is writing and why he is writing. Now remember, he is writing to the Jewish believers who are part of the 12 tribes of Israel. He's writing to his fellow Jews, and he is instructing them in a couple of things in this letter. To start with, he is encouraging them to have faith in God and keep their faith in spite of the fact that they are being persecuted. He also is writing this letter as a means of showing them some false teachings that they have come into contact with and how they needed to stay away from these false teachings. Now, he's doing more than writing a hang in there for those who are being persecuted. He is also writing a letter to tell the people, let's get this thing right. Now, with that in mind, James concludes his letters with these two verses that are his final admonition, and this admonition involves the wandering away from the teachings of Jesus Christ by somebody who has faith in Jesus. Now, if someone errs from the truth, James says that if another believer brings him back from the error of his way and helps him to live in the truth of the teachings of Jesus Christ again, then he is going to save that individual from death, and he will also help to arrange for the forgiveness of many, many sins. Now, based on what James writes at the end of his letter and taking into context the entire letter, an individual follower of Jesus Christ can fall away from the teachings of Jesus Christ because of coming under the influence of false teachings, but also because of continued sin in their own lives. If this happens, a fellow believer can, and I feel should, point out the incorrect living, the falling away, and help their fellow believer to come back to the truth of living in the teachings of Jesus Christ. Now, by doing that, the person can be brought back into the correct path, not continue to stray away. Now, the term exhorter is used by some to describe an individual who encourages people to have faith in Jesus Christ and to live by his teachings. That term exhorter could also, I think, be used to describe someone who is trying to help a believer stay in the path. An exhorter is an encourager, someone who shows the right way to live to other people. Now, if you think about it, to have the expression or the title exhorter applied to your name could be a very good thing. You may be called Jaden the Exhorter or Susan the Exhorter. It actually kind of sounds like a pretty good title to have. Now comes a very important concept in these last two verses. By helping someone who has erred to come back to the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the one who helps him or her return to the path of truth is going to save a death from occurring and will facilitate the forgiveness of many sins, according to James' last two verses. Now, if you look in Strong's exhaustive concordance, and look at that word death that is used there in James chapter 5 and verse number 20, you'll discover that the word used is thanatos. Now, thanatos is related to our word euthanasia that involves death. It means in its widest sense, and I'll quote, death comprising all the miseries arising from sin as the loss of a life consecrated to God and blessed in him on earth, to be followed by wretchedness in hell. Now, the basic meaning of thanatos is that moment at which there is a separation between the soul and the body when the body reaches its final point of existence. The soul is separated, the body dies physically. Now, since physical death is something that everyone is going to experience in one way or another, it would seem logical that James is not talking about physical death here. It would seem logical that he is talking about spiritual death in this last statement. Now, his whole letter has the intent of helping people to walk in the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ, to live according to the teachings of Jesus. I think it's a very appropriate way for James to end his letter by telling the fellow believers, his fellow Jewish Christians, that anyone who helps someone to stay in the truth, to stay in the teachings of Jesus Christ, is going to be able to save a spiritual death from occurring. They will be able to help somebody have their sins forgiven. A good ending for the book of James. Now, we've come to the end of our study in the lessons that have been entitled 10 Minutes with James. Now, the 10 Minutes with series will continue in our next post. The next time we have a 10 Minutes with, it is going to be taking a look at the Old Testament prophet of Malachi. So the next time you see 10 Minutes with, it'll say 10 Minutes with Malachi. Allow me to encourage you to like our Facebook page and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find notes and transcripts for these lessons at our church website, which is westvillag.org. May God richly bless you until next time.